Hello, today we're going to present the Cuya Lavy and others versus Peru case of the American Court of Human Rights.
So to explain this case, we are going to use the IRAC method. So first of all, we are going to with the issue. Okay, but first we're going to talk about the context of the case. This case relates to Peru international responsibility for the lack of due process guarantees during the evaluation and ratification proceedings of Jorge Luis Cuya Lavy and 3 other individuals as judges or prosecutors, as well as for the lack of judicial remedy to challenge the decision. So first of all, Mr. Jorge Cuya Lavy entered the judicial career in November 1994 when he was appointed as the specialized civil judge of the Judicial District of Lima. Also, Walter Antonio Valenzuela Serna was appointed as judge of the Third Court of Peace in 1984 and effectively began his judicial career in January 1985. Mr. John Albert Diaz Alvarado and Ms. Marta Silvia Rodriguez were appointed as deputy provincial prosecutors to the Mixed Provincial Prosecutor's Office in Huancuyo of the Judicial District in 1989 and 1987. Secondly, between 2001 and 2002, the plenary of the National Council of Judiciaries, also CNM, summoned individual evaluations and ratification process, and at the end of this process, the CNM determined the non-ratification of the 4 victims of the case. None of the CNM's decisions were motivated as the current regulation did not require. Third, in order to challenge the decisions, the victims filed various actions until receive the extraordinary remedies known by the Second Chamber of the Constitutional Court, which declares the actions unfounded on the different arguments, including that the ratification function of the CNM could only be reviewed exceptionally and these determinations were not considered punitive, so their motivation was not necessary. And finally, taking into account the vote between 2003 and July 2008, the victims filed their individual petitions before the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights, who after various proceedings accumulated petitions and sent the case into the American Court of Human Rights in August 2019. Okay, so the principal issue of this case is whether the states violate the right to a fair trial and judicial protections, as well as the right to work recognized in the American Convention on Human Rights in relation to the non-ratification of the victims as public officials. Okay, the second IRAC method is the rule. The rule applicable to this case is the interpretation of the Article 25 of the American Convention of Human Rights that says everyone has the right to simple and promote recurse or any other effective recourse to a competent court or tribunal to protection against acts that violate his fundamental rights recognized by the Constitution or laws of the state concerned or by his convention, even that such violation may have been committed by persons acting in the course of their official duties, which means that it recognizes the right of judicial protection, and also the court must analyze the relevant nation legal frameworks and jurisprudence, as well as the principle of due process and the presumption of innocence.
Now we're going to proceed with the analysis that the court made in the present case by comparing the issue in the light of the rules that are applicable for this case. So in the first place, the court establishes that both judges and public prosecutors are subject to the right of stability to the jurisdictional function of the state, which implies that these public officers can only be released from their duties under specific circumstances mentioned in the law of said state. And in any case, they have the right to be subject to a fair trial. Such rights must be recognized and respected by every single public official of the state without considering their hierarchy. In second place, the court finds that the state of Peru violated the rights to honor and dignity of the plaintiffs, as well as the right to a fair trial, once again, by not providing a valid justification for their cancellation and retirement from the positions of judges and public prosecutors. According to this, when a state fails to provide valid reasons for removing a public official from their position, this is directly affecting their life plan, and thus their honor and reputation at both a personal and professional level. In third place, the right to judicial defense was also neglected by the state of Peru in the sense that the plaintiffs were not granted enough time nor resources to defend themselves in court when the competent authority decided to cancel the designations. This was because it didn't receive in time the report made by the Permanent Commission of Evaluation and Ratification of Judges and Prosecutors. Now, in the second part of the analysis, the court found that the state of Peru also violated its obligation to provide an effective legal mechanism to the plaintiffs to receive reparation or dispute the offenses committed against them. The acción de amparo was not effective for anyone since they were declared unfounded or were rejected under a past understanding of the decisions of the Consejo Nacional de la Magistratura, that up to the early 2000s were not subject to any kind of revision. Then such a prohibition was changed, but that consideration was disregarded by the authorities who negated the acción de amparo. All in all, the court finds that Peru violated the rights mentioned above in regard to the plaintiffs due to the violation of the guarantees of the right to a fair trial not being completely respected, in the terms of Article 8 and also Article 25 of the American Convention on Human Rights. Finally, an additional element brought up by the court is the standard of protection to human rights that they decided to apply in this case. In essence, they applied the known trio of protection, respect, and fulfill, which is usually referred to for civil and political rights. In relation to the case, the court found that the state of Peru breached its obligations to respect the right to a fair trial in the terms of Article 8 and also its obligation to fulfill, even if it does not phrase it that way, in regard to the obligation to provide effective legal mechanisms to protect one's rights.
Finally, for the conclusion, even though they didn't present the reclamation in the proper way of the acts of the state, finally, the court considered that the state was responsible for violating rights of the victims recognized in Article 25.1 of the American Convention of Human Rights, which already has been explained before, in relation to the Articles 1 and 2 of the same instrument. By one side, the Article 1 refers to the fact that every single state must respect the rights and liberties that are exposed in the convention, and in the Article 2 that follows the principle of conventionality, which is also one of the most important for us, because by following this article, even though the internal Peruvian law did not protect the rights because the absence of it in its norms, the convention guarantees any right or liberty of the first article that is not in the internal normativity of any state that is related to this court. The court also emphasized on the reparation of the victims presented in the case. The most relevant part of it are willing to correct the damages that they did by the restitution, the guarantee of non-repetition by adopting legislative or other measures to align its domestic legal system with what is established in the American Court of Human Rights regarding to the reincorporation of non-ratified judges and the possibility of appealing the decisions through with the non-ratification of judges is determined, the conventionality, indemnities, and finally, the expenses of the process.
That's all, folks.